plan, but we're having just a tiny board meeting right before. So if everybody would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So, Mr. Wink, if you'd please call the meeting to order.
Town of North Hempstead Board Meeting, Wednesday, December 5th, 2018. Councilwoman DeGiorgio.
Here.
Councilman Ferrara.
Here.
Councilwoman Kaplan. Councilwoman Russell. Councilwoman Seaman.
Here.
Councilman Zuckerman.
Here.
Supervisor Bosworth.
Here. Okay, so I'm assuming there's no public comment. All right. Mr. Wink, would you please begin today's agenda?
Sure. Item 1. Give me 1 second. Resolutions. Item 1. A resolution setting a date for a public hearing to consider the adoption of a local law amending Chapter 18 of the Town Code entitled Excavations, Highway.
Okay, so this is a local law that will prohibit road openings on town roads that have been repaved within the preceding 3 years or constructed within the preceding 5 years, subject to certain exceptions. And this is as a result of, we're paving roads and we are trying to coordinate with the various utilities, and they give us their plan, and then all of a sudden they give us a new plan, and they're tearing up roads that we've just repaved or that we've done, significant work on. So this is really to kind of hold them accountable. So it's a set date, and I'd like to offer the resolution and set the hearing date for December 18th, 2018.
Councilwoman DeGiorgio.
Before I vote aye, I want to say that I think it's very good that we're doing this. We started to realize last July when we got involved with the National Grid project in Port Washington and Sandy Hollow Road, how much work National Grid was planning for the town. So we have a lot of meetings between last July and now, and I just want to thank the Highway Department, Joe Gerasi, Kevin, Steve Pollack in particular, for really, really drilling down on this. And this is the right thing to do. I mean, I don't know what roads are impacted. I had sent Janine an email asking her, which roads we recently repaved that National Grid is looking now to do work on. But thank you. I think this is really necessary and needed. And a lot of effort and hard work went into it, and I just think it's a great idea. I vote aye.
Sorry, I just want to comment on that. It's really difficult when residents see the roads being torn up after they've been repaved.
Exactly.
And we've made every effort to coordinate this with, whether it's National Grid or PSEG, and then then we're accused of being incompetent. And
right.
It's really through no fault of our own. We've made that diligent effort to coordinate, and then all of a sudden we decided to do it differently.
Right, and I mean, we saw it in particular on Oakland and Briarcliff, where we had just finished paving it, and they came in and tore up the road. And yeah, I mean, and other I asked a few other municipalities, other electeds that I know, this is what they do. They hold all utilities, not just National Grid, but any utility. No, I said PSEG. I mean,
yeah.
Anybody accountable.
Right, and there are times when there's an emergency and you have to dig up a road. We understand that, but it shouldn't be that we've coordinated a plan and we've had their plan, and then all of a sudden it's, we decided to do different roads, and they're the roads that we've just paved.
Yeah, and I mean, and the nice thing too, what we were able to do is get some cost sharing from National Grid with respect to some of the work that they did in Port Washington, which was really great. I mean, that's sort of like that's like government working perfectly, where we're so in sync with them that we can track our paving schedule to what they want to do. Yeah, I think it's
government working pretty well.
In this instance,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Wing.
Councilman Ferrara.
I think we had the hearing already.
I vote aye.
Councilwoman Seaman.
Aye.
Councilman Zuckerman.
Aye.
Supervisor Bosworth.
Aye. I move to adjourn.
Councilwoman DeGiorgio.
Aye.
Councilman Ferrara.
Aye.
Councilwoman Seaman.
Aye.
Councilman Zuckerman.
Aye.
Supervisor Bosworth.
Aye. So, Mr. Wink, if you'd please call the capital plan work session to order.
Okay, item 2, a work session regarding the Town of North Hempstead 2019 capital plan.
Okay. So that doesn't require another vote. That's just wait. No. Okay. So good morning, everybody. Good morning again. I've seen many of you before. Welcome to our capital plan work session. And the purpose of this work session is to review the proposed capital improvement plan for 2019 to 2023. The capital plan presents the major projects the town will be pursuing over the next 5 years. The plan also shows the proposed funding for each project, whether it's through bonding, pay-as-you-go, grants, or FEMA reimbursement. Believe it or not, we're still getting FEMA reimbursement from Superstorm Sandy. It's a long process. The town's road infrastructure is critically important, and based on input from each council person, we have increased funding for road and drainage over the last several years. The 2019 plan increases road funding by $850,000 for 2019. Sidewalk repairs are critically important for pedestrian safety, and this year we're making a commitment to address sidewalks by continuing to allocate $1 million annually. In addition, we've assigned a full-time manager to the sidewalk district who will oversee the everyday operations of the district while also coordinating larger infrastructure projects. Thank you, Joe. Many of our residents use the Port Washington public parking lots, and so thank you for the work that's been done on the reconstruction of Lot 4. That seemed to have gone well. It really looks great and will benefit these residents for many years to come. I want to thank each council person for their focus on all of these important issues and the continued support for the funding that needs to be devoted to our road infrastructure. The plan also provides funding to improve the quality of parks for our constituents. Our parks is where we come together as a community for concerts, programs for seniors and families, summer recreation opportunities, and of course to enjoy the various pools. This past year has been a very busy one for parks and our DPW capital teams. I think that's an understatement. Clinton G. Martin Pool reconstruction was completed, and our residents were able to enjoy this new facility all summer. Other smaller projects were also completed, such as the renovation of the handball courts at Tully Park. The Mill Pond Park Model Yacht House experienced a much-needed facelift. Mannahaven Beach Pool now benefits from new shade structures, and Donald Street Park splash pad have been replaced. These are just some of the wonderful projects completed. That there were also numerous other projects that are not as sparkly or sexy, such as boiler systems, elevators, roofs, but of course no less important. Looking forward to the future, the North Hempstead Beach Visioning will continue in 2019. We look forward to sharing various proposals for this park that are based from the community outreach and meetings that were completed in the initial visioning phase. I will tell you that the capital plan is a result of the hard work of our Director of Finance, Jessica Lamandella, thank you, with critical assistance from Steve Pollack and oversight by Deputy Supervisor Ali Cacciatoria. The town is indeed fortunate to have a slate of all of you, devoted commissioners, deputy commissioners, department heads, who have just worked so hard to give us input as to what the critical needs are to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place to be able to serve our town and its residents. So we thank you for all your contributions and for your suggestions for the plan. Of course, this is a work session, and so we're going to have a chance to ask questions, go over things. Jessica will give us, will walk us through some of the main points of the capital plan, and then we will be voting on this December 18th, and within these 2 weeks, please, any questions, and I'm talking to the town council members, any questions, any suggestions, our team is here ready to work with you. Understand anything we add means something else needs to be reduced, but we are looking forward to a comprehensive capital plan that really is thorough and takes care of the needs. So, Jessica, you're on.
Thank you, Supervisor. As the Supervisor mentioned, the team that works to put this plan together is a very large team, consisting of every department head, their deputies, every council member, your aides. along with the supervisor and her staff. So thank you for your help, thank you for your attention, and thank you for your feedback. I look forward to additional feedback. Paul and his team at DPW, I just want to sincerely thank you as well. Your eagerness to develop the plan and your willingness to continually fine-tune your estimates and projections truly benefit not only the plan but the overall town and the infrastructure improvements that we see. In addition, Steve Pollack, I know the supervisor said critical assistance, and I just want to acknowledge that without Steve's hard work and persistence in moving this plan forward, we would not be at this place. He has really stepped up this year, even more so, if you can imagine. So I genuinely really appreciate your help.
Thank you, Steve.
The feedback provided from both Judy, Aline, Janine, Liz, the entire management team has been invaluable. I appreciate the opportunity now to help develop the plan to address the town's infrastructure needs, as the plan really does lay out the future projects, the future goals of the town. I think that's just a really special place. The plan today is to discuss the included projects, but before that I'll discuss what the pages look like, just so we can all become more familiar or refamiliarize ourselves. I want to highlight and really emphasize that this is simply a plan. We acknowledge that things will change. Certain projects become of greater priority for a variety of reasons. Some projects take longer. Sometimes we're waiting on permits. And overall, this is a plan that lays out what we believe is our priorities today. But obviously that will change throughout the year and throughout the 5 years of the plan. So moving into the book is divided between funds. And the fund is what pays for the ultimate debt typically. So that would be the general fund, moving on to the town outside village, moving on to the town operated special districts. Within these divisions are various categories included, such as town facilities, park upgrades, the planning department projects, public works, technology, vehicles and equipment purchases, and then on each page contains information regarding the category the project is in, a brief description, what we currently believe the operating impact could be. The final plan will include all the SECRA designations, the State Environmental Quality Review Act. It'll include the bond resolutions that will ultimately be voted on and presented as well. And at the end of the book, you will see a summary chart that continues to summarize the projected annual expenditures. It includes cash on hand and grants, which are subtracted out of the total cost of the project, which is how we arrive at our estimated borrowing requirements. So with no further ado, we'll move forward into the actual projects. First, let's highlight some of the great projects we completed in 2018. As the supervisor mentioned, this was an exceptionally busy year. When you have such a large project as the Clinton G. Clinton Pool, that obviously takes a lot of focus, not only away from our DPW and our parks teams, but just overall managing the opening, the implementation of a first-year pool. So, I mean, that is one of our biggest projects this year.
So Jessica, I'm just going to say a great deal of thanks goes to Paul DiMaria, to Victor, to Rob, for really being so on target, moving the project forward. We had committed that the pool would only be closed for one season. That was a big promise, and you made it happen. And of course, a thank you to Jill Weber as our Commissioner of Parks for dealing with all the things that go into getting a pool ready to open in the way that it was, the programming. When we go to different New Hyde Park meetings, even yesterday, we saw that the people are so appreciative and acknowledge the fact that the pool is wonderful. They're so happy that they were able to enjoy it this past summer. As with anything that's new, if you do, if you build a new house, there are always things that need to be tweaked, and so we are also in the process of looking at the things that need to be tweaked, and we're doing that, and we look forward to a great season. It's hard to think of a summer season, but we're looking forward to a great summer season, and we thank everybody who was involved. It was an amazing project.
Other projects that were completed, the townwide elevator upgrade. I think everybody is thankful for that project. So that's been completed. The Mackey Horse Plaza upgrade, the renovation of the handball courts at Tully Park, the drainage improvements on the softball fields at Tully Park, the improvement to the methane detection system at Tully Park, the Mill Pond Park Model Yacht House, Port Washington Public Parking District Lot 4, the non-motorized dock at Hempstead Beach Park.
Which is fabulous. Just saying.
Good. We've heard a lot of great
Yeah.
feedback. I think many of the community members were very vocal leading up to it, and I think that they've really enjoyed it. So, thanks, Paul. The sidewalks along the Grand Boulevard, Denton Avenue HVAC renovations, LED lighting upgrades on Glen Cove Road and Hillside Avenue, the $4 million milling and paving operation, roof renovations at Roslyn Community Center, HVAC replacement of 2 units at the Gold Coast Arts Center, installation of a new playground at Broadway Park, garage door replacement at the Trades Crew Building at North Hempstead Beach Park, parking lot upgrades at Clark Gardens, Camera Park boiler replacement, installation of shade structure at the Manor Haven Beach Park pool, renovation of Ritter's Pond Park shed roof, replacement of an irrigation system at the 8th and Asbury Ball Field, Searingtown Pond Park roof renovation, replacement of splash pad surface at Donald Street Park, and then also, those are just some of the bigger projects that took a little more time and planning to move forward.
And Mary Jane Davies playground.
Yes.
Jill, how are we doing with that? Okay.
Obviously, that's a very well-used park, and being here in this facility, we see that a lot. So that'll be a great opportunity for the kids in the community. So those are just some of the really basic projects, but even beyond that, we've done numerous upgrades at our facilities that didn't make the list, that are just smaller in funding. So as you can tell, our team here has been extremely busy. So then we're moving on into the current plan, looking out the next 5 years. I'm going to ask Steve Pollock to just briefly highlight, maybe just name them, and as we go through, we'll go in more detail of the new projects that we've included in the plan.
Sure. So if you're beginning the book, if you look at the animal shelter page, which is on page 5, we've added additional funding to this project and also additional projects to the facility. Throughout 2018, we've kind of developed final scope of work for the outdoor kennel enclosures, and unfortunately it's more money than we had originally anticipated. Admin Services has also identified HVAC replacement, and they also need to install a new air exchange system, and also various improvements have been identified. Moving to Town Hall 1 and 2, which is on page 9 and 10 of the PDF. We anticipate this year completing the septic system upgrades at Town Hall 2 and also the roof and HVAC replacements in 19. You'll notice that the windows project has been pushed out as the priority of the other projects have superseded that project. Moving into the Parks Department, going to page 14, which is Clark Gardens. In 2018, we completed a study of the pond systems at Clark, and we are putting in funding for the engineering to continue that study in fiscal year 19, and then the construction estimates that we currently have right now of $1.5 million in fiscal year 20. Moving on to the next page, which is page 15, which is the CGM page. We are anticipating having final design completed shortly for the parking lot, and that will be bid out and completed. We plan on completing in 2019. There's also some HVAC work that needs to happen at the facility. That's the community building there that the general fund uses. And we have put money in the out year. The HVAC system there is an original to the building itself. I believe the building was built in 1989. So the building, the HVAC system is now 30 years old. Moving on to page 18, which is Harbor Links. We just broke out, if you look at the first 2 lines in the expenditure schedule, they're general improvements, and then we broke out the irrigation system. The irrigation system was built when the golf course was constructed in the late 1990s. We're anticipating having to replace the whole system. And we're just putting in the book in fiscal year 22. Other general improvements that the Harbor Links Golf Course has identified will be on that top line. And if you wish, we can get into more detail about that. Moving on to page 23. This is Manor Haven Beach Park. We're looking to resurface both of the basketball courts that are in the rear of the park in 2019. We're also putting in money for various improvements, smaller work that the Parks Department has identified, such as upgrading the beach showers, replacing the water main. We're also putting in funding for engineering work for an evaluation of the pool itself. Although the pool was reconstructed in 2011, the maintenance staff has been putting a lot of time and effort into opening it each year, and we need to kind of figure out the best approach to repair it properly. And Victor Thomas is a subject matter expert on that, so we can speak to that later. The next page, I was notified that Viviana would be here very shortly, so if, we'll go back to page 24, which is Bunky Reed Park. So we'll move on to Tully Park, which is on page 27. At Tully Park, we added a new project, which is electrical service. It's my understanding that the current electrical service system is underground, and it's currently bending, and could create a very severe situation if we do not remove it from its current situation and renovate it and put it overhead. So that's an expensive project, but it needs to be done. We're also adding additional funding for the HVAC work that's been identified there. And we've also moved the locker room upgrades and turf and track. We've put more funding into those projects. Skipping ahead to page 34. This is the town dock. Typically, repairs or capital improvements to the town dock would be paid out of general improvement parks money. But this year, since public safety has identified various improvements to the building itself, we have made a separate page just for that park, and that's on page 34, and that includes all the requests that have been made by public safety. You'll notice page 36. This is also in Viviana's district, but we have spoken to her about this. This is a new page in the capital plan. Mike Kelly can elaborate on the details on this, but this is the Yes We Can parking lot. I think now would be a good time to, if you can summarize that if possible.
Sure. We have recently transferred the former Grant Street School to the North Hempstead Housing Authority for the construction of affordable housing, affordable senior housing at that location. As part of that, we are receiving an easement over the Magnolia property adjacent to the Grant Street School, over which we would be building a new parking lot to replace the one that's at the corner of the Grant Street and Broadway, to basically increase parking for the Yes We Can Community Center.
Thank you. Moving into the Public Works section of the book, which would be page 45. This project was in the capital plan in 2018. The funding schedule was different as presented in 2018 compared to 2019. The original estimates and thoughts provided that this would be a three-phase project. It is now a two-phase project, and I'm referring to the Beacon Hill Bluff construction. The original estimate, I believe, was $9 million, and the new estimates anticipate $7.5 million, but with more money in fiscal year 19. And I believe the engineering is like 90% complete.
Correct.
Right? Yes. So that project should be occurring in 2019. If you move to page 47, this is Gary Pond Park, general improvements. The major project on this page is the sediment removal and pond restoration work. Through the efforts of the planning department, we were able to attain all of our permits very recently, and we look to move this project forward as quickly as possible. I'd also like to note that on this page, you'll notice that there's an additional line under expenditure schedule for building restoration. This is for engineering work to evaluate the facility at the park, including the roof and the water wheel system that is currently rotted out. If you please move to page 50. This is a new project. This is the general premise of this project is basically using the gray water collected at Solid Waste Management Authority and reroute that water to Harbor Links for it to be used to irrigate the golf course. Robert Lang is here, and he can speak into a great deal detail about that if additional questions.
It will save money both from SWAMA having to pay to get rid of the water and for Harbor Leaks having to currently purchase. So there's definitely budget savings after the project is complete.
And it's a great environmental initiative.
If we can move to page 56. This is the security improvements town-wide. At the June 5th town board meeting, a security consultant was hired. Security evaluation was completed at Town Hall 1, 2, and 3. The draft final report was received by the town very recently, and we plan on meeting with all department heads involved in operating and securing these facilities and developing a development and implementation plan. We have increased the funding in this on this page from previous years. The methodology behind the expenditure schedule here is that the critical upgrades are in fiscal year 19, the high grade upgrades are in fiscal year 20, and other projects that have been identified that are lower on the scale of criticality are in future years. Moving on to page 62. This is Solid Waste Management Authority facility improvements. Currently, Solid Waste Management Authority is working with an engineering firm on the evaluation of the facilities. Included in the funding for fiscal year 19 is to continue with this contract. Design and installation of a camera security system for the property, milling and paving the transfer station asphalt grounds, installation of concrete dumpsters as a storage pad, and in future years we had put in a placeholder in fiscal year 20 for upgrades identified by the study that's going to be completed in 2019. Page 63, which is the gas and groundwater monitoring system. We've also increased additional funding into this project. These increases are based on studies and engineering work that has been completed throughout 18 and that will continue into 19. Similarly on page 64, which is the leachate system improvements. Moving on to page 69. This is the annual drainage funding allocation. We've increased this from previous years. The Highway Department has informed us that they have more and more structures that are in need of repair and replacement, so we have thus increased this allocation. If you move to the next page, page 70, this is the concrete roads. We have also increased this allocation. The concrete requirements contract was executed in 2018. Joe Gerasi has been working very diligently in getting price quotes and price proposals for various jobs identified, and we're still continuing to evaluate them, but the initial cost estimates that have come in very high. So based on that information that we've attained thus far, we have increased the allocation. Moving on to page 77. This page is focused on the buildings department. Technology improvements. IT has been working with the Buildings Department in replacing Amanda, which will not be supported by the beginning of 2020. So we have a timeline to implement new application software and to improve Amanda's current capabilities. And we're also going to be purchasing them a large format scanner. I just would like to also point out on page 78, we're continuing to fund the Buildings Department vehicle requests. If we can move ahead to page 83. This is the project page that's dedicated to the sidewalk district. The sidewalk district, again, is being run now by Joe Gerasi, and he is also moving forward with a lot of sidewalk work. As indicated across the street here at Town Hall 2, that job was just recently completed, and he has identified many, many jobs. And like the concrete roads, the prices are high, and we're doing our best to fund all the projects that have been identified. The next page, page 84. This is the page dedicated to the Harbor Hills Special Park District. A study has been completed on what upgrades will need to occur to continue to operate the pool at that facility. The number that's included in fiscal year 19 is the high end on that estimate. We're continuing to work with the Civic Association and to determine the final scope of work. A lot of the scope of work will be determined by the Nassau County Department of Health, and this work is anticipated to begin in fall of 2019. The Civic Association has also requested that we evaluate their parking lot, so we have put in a placeholder in fiscal year 20 for engineering work and construction in 2021. And that's it for projects that I'm aware of.
So I think Steve has highlighted the bigger projects, and especially some of the newer ones. At this time, we would be happy to take questions.
For the Port Washington Parking District, what's the plans in terms of the next, it's page 85. What's the, now that lot 4 is done, what are you thinking if you're doing in 2019, there's $400,000 allocated. What's that for?
Lots 1 and 5 were identified last year, and lot 5 has some work where we have to improve an embankment where we'll need a retaining wall and some drainage improvements. The other improvements in the lot 1 and 5 would be additional striping possibilities if we could increase any parking.
So one is the train station.
Right. Now the one is a little more complicated than the scope of work, because we're going to have to coordinate with the Long Island Railroad, because of the work they're going to be doing there. They're going to be giving us some land and some property. There's been some sketches that floated around about changing the lot, taking out the islands, and again restriping the parking lot for maximum parking. But that exact plan
Well,
hasn't.
that was part of them acquiring a piece of the property, and my understanding is that conversation stalled. Am I wrong about that, or what's been the progress on that discussion with the railroad about taking a piece of our property and eliminating some of our parking spaces?
Yeah, I don't know that it's stalled. I think the question hasn't been finalized. I think that will go through, but it's just a question of how. Again, we've had a few plans. I wasn't fully involved in how acquiring the land,
maybe
though.
the town attorney can tell us.
Yeah.
Well, we that conversation, you know, it's been taking a long time. I know it came up a few years ago. We're going to have to continue having that conversation. There's no conclusion to that at this point, obviously.
Well, the conclusion of the conversation is going to have a significant negative impact on the train station. So I think you're right in that we should think about maybe restriping lot 1 and redoing it, and I think there's more parking that can be maximized there because the drive aisles are so wide.
Right.
So I think that's a good idea. I don't think it makes sense to spend the money unless we know what's going on with the railroad. Part of the issue is the railroad, my understanding of of taking over the property is like the pedestrian bridge has to be rebuilt, and that's an enormously expensive project. So I'm still really not clear on what we're doing. So I kind of think we need to be really clear about what we're doing. And when you say you think it's going ahead, I'm not sure why you think it's going ahead.
Well, I think the focus here is not lot 1, it's 5. So, again, this lot was identified a few years ago as in the progress of this year. And again, it's a plan. So if we don't do anything with lot 1 next year, and maybe it's the next year, then that could be shifted. But I think the main focus is lot 5.
Yeah, 5 is the lot behind Dunkin' Donuts, isn't it? Oh, the Carlos.
Yeah, and again, the main concern there is that steep slope, and we wanted to improve the retaining wall and drainage.
So all of the metered parking and the commuter parking, or just one section of lot 5?
I mean, that's for discussion with the parking district. I mean, if there's something that they can show us that would be an improvement, we would certainly do it.
Well, can we restripe the commuter section to get more parking spaces out of it?
We haven't evaluated that yet. I mean, if we were to gain some spaces, I mean, it wouldn't be 20 spaces.
No,
it would be,
I
under 10.
think we did actually look at it once, and the conclusion was that there wasn't really.
And again, that could be the conclusion again, but I don't want to just, I don't want to not look at that again.
So what's the
Actually,
plan?
I just want to know that Councilwoman Russell has joined us.
So what's the action steps that you're going to take?
I think historically, Paul and his team, as well as our team, have involved you and your office, since you know the community so well, and with the guidance of Supervisor Bosworth. So I think the plan for 2019 is that we put funding in it so that we can address some of the known issues with Lot 5. Like leading up to the summer season, because I would anticipate the work needing to be done during that time, would be my assumption. We will be holding another meeting internally that we can further discuss your specific concerns and come up with the plan that everybody can agree on as a good option for 2019. I think it's important that Paul highlighted Lot 1, because obviously there's a lot of issues surrounding it, but obviously the community would like to see some movement on that, and so you see additional funding in the out years. And we will continue to work with you and your office, and obviously Supervisor Bosworth's team, to just ensure that we're meeting those needs. But for 2019, Lot 5, with some of the basic changes, drainage, engagement issue, that would be our focus.
Yeah, I think the lots immediately adjacent to the train station need a significant amount of work. But it doesn't, we have to figure out what we're doing as far as the railroad goes. I don't know that the railroad, I didn't know that the railroad was still pursuing that plan. So maybe we need to get an answer about that.
Sure. I think because of all the attention to the third track, I don't know that the railroad has been as focused, on this as they otherwise might have been.
I think that's probably definitely true. The problem is that what they originally proposed and what we told them we needed are two very different things, and it's a huge difference in funding. So in my mind, I'm wondering if they're thinking they're going to try to continue with their original proposal or come around to what we suggested they need to do.
Well, they need to be working with us, clearly.
Just, as I said before, I wanted to wait for Viviana just to identify another new project in the plan, which we had discussed with her. It is going to be page 24, which is for Martin Bunky Reed Park. Engineering work has been completed this year to evaluate the pool mechanical system for the pool there, also to evaluate the changing room, and also to evaluate the feasibility of having a spray pad there. So if you're looking at page 24, fiscal year 19, we have funding in place to proceed with the pool mechanical recommendations that the engineering report has provided to the town. Fiscal year 20, that's a placeholder for the changing room work. And in fiscal year 2021, we're putting in the current construction cost estimate for the spray pad at that facility.
I have a question on the sidewalk funding. How was that allocated?
In the current year, we are anticipating our sidewalk crew addressing the more everyday repairs, and then the larger capital projects will be funded through bond funds. In terms of allocation, as we've become very aware, these projects, the larger capital projects, are extremely expensive. So unlike like the roads where we try to address areas within each district every year, I think with this type of project, we will be looking at the severity of need in terms of the actual area we address in any given year. We'll be working with each council person. You guys obviously know your districts best, to help us identify, if we have not already, areas within your district that are of extreme need. And I think it's more of an internal discussion throughout the year to help address the most critical areas.
So as far as the repair of the sidewalks, there's no specific allocation by district?
I do not believe historically that is how it's been done.
I understand it. And I guess the question that I have is, why not? You know, I mean, if you look at the sidewalks that are in repair or disrepair, I think they're throughout the town. It's pretty significant because the trees that we have in there absolutely uproot the sidewalk significantly. And I think that we probably should have a little more of a sustained action that we want to take by district to make sure that all the districts are treated equitably in that repair.
Okay.
I mean, one of the reasons why we haven't sort of taken an equal approach is because some districts have more sidewalks than other districts. There's some districts where there are no sidewalks in many areas, and there's some districts that most places there are sidewalks. So we haven't been able to figure out a methodology yet, and we're working towards that. Again, and our mission here is to have safe sidewalks. So that's one of the things that why we're addressing the areas that we currently know about first. I mean, there are areas that with these trees lifting up sidewalks, again, we want safe sidewalks. So we do have a list of areas that we've already been identified. You know, we can share that with you. And again, these are areas that have been known, you know, from this year, maybe last year, and again, in response to 311.
Well, I'd like to get that list also, and also look even with the road repair. I mean, one of the things that I've talked about for the last couple of years is the fact, you know, as you brought up, the fact that some areas don't have sidewalks, so there's a disproportionate need for sidewalk repair. I think similarly to the road repair, if you look at some of the separation of the houses and how many acres of property or how many lots that they have versus some of the other more condensed areas which are more heavily trafficked, that should be taken into consideration in the formula of where we spend our money in repairing the roads, because if it's more heavily trafficked, there's going to be more damage and more need in those areas than there are in a more quote, rural area of the town.
Yeah. I think, was that done with the road repaving schedules that we did last year? I know last year was a little bit different than prior years, doing exactly that, looking at the different districts and seeing how much roadway they have, and then proportionately distributing the funding or the amount of roadways.
Based on length, not
Right,
population.
Linear foot.
Not the population, but the length of roads. Right, I think that was done, so I agree, doing maybe the same thing with the sidewalks maybe
Right,
would be
I
helpful.
think that was a great idea, to figure out what's the total and each district's percentage of the total and coming up with, that seems equitable. I think the same thing should be done with the sidewalks. I don't know, that seems like an awful lot of work to measure the linear feet of the sidewalks, but that might be the right approach.
So we've engaged a vendor to assess our roads along with other items along the roadside. So we hope that will help lead to a better assessment of our overall sidewalk responsibility in the town. But I would, add, putting Joe Gerasi in the role to almost to supervise the sidewalk district as his sole responsibility, or one of the largest responsibilities, I think will lead to some of these solutions that you've identified in the past. We are working our hardest, but I do think having somebody that is fully dedicated to evaluating the sidewalk, managing the crew in a way that is addressing not only equitably in terms of district-wise, but in terms of safety. As Paul said, our ultimate goal is to have a safe sidewalk. We hear you. We are doing our best to come up with different methodologies, different ideas. I think that the tree issue is a real issue. So what we're focused on is bringing together both the sidewalk crew, the highway crew, and our outside partners to come up with a plan of how, one, what type of trees can be planted, the timing of when the crew comes in to take out the stump, to temporarily address the sidewalk, and then replace the sidewalk. So I think all of these issues are very clear to us, and we are trying to identify additional methodologies to improve the timing and response. And I think just like the method of allocating our road system by linear foot, I know that some council people were somewhat skeptical of that approach initially, but I do think that it is working through, and we are benefiting as a town, because it's really important not only for to look at the district-wise, but it gave us an opportunity to evaluate our overall road system, and that's leading to now evaluating our overall sidewalk system in a way that I hope is unique, and we'll start to be able to more quickly address our infrastructure needs.
You know, one of the challenges that we face is the disrepair of sidewalks along county roads and along state roads. And so our understanding is that our task is to repair and maintain, but not to replace. And yet if you speak to the county or you speak to the state DOT, they'll say curb to curb. If we were to be responsible for replacing the sidewalks along state roads, our whole capital plan would be replacing sidewalks. So we just actually, there's an area in Lee's district, in New Hyde Park, where there are sidewalks that absolutely need very substantial work, but you're talking about a project that's millions and millions of dollars, and we need help from our state to deal with this, whether it's in the form of grants or an understanding of the fact that a municipality like a town cannot be responsible for replacing sidewalks along county roads and sidewalks along state roads. And that's something that we're going to be working on very, very strongly this year. We need to be very urgently looking at grant possibilities. We want our sidewalks to be safe, but our whole capital plan cannot be replacing sidewalks, because as you can see from the things that Jessica and Steve have gone through, we have needs throughout the town for other
but I'm
areas
just
as
looking
well.
at, whatever that amount of money is, I think if you look proportionately by district, because the point was made that some areas do not have sidewalks, so,
Right.
so there's not as much of a need there. But if we put a formula in place that says, this is how much money we have, this is the percentage of the sidewalks that they have, that's how it should be allocated, because I don't think there's any district that doesn't have a problem that wouldn't absorb all the money we can spend in any given year to replace the sidewalks in those districts and make them safer.
You
So
make a good
it's-
point, so let's, we'll
I think,
look into that.
Working with Joe in terms of the plan for 2019, using the operating funds, and that's typically how we address the replacement, the smaller projects. I think in the next 60 to 90 days, this is the time to lay out that plan for the part of the year that we more consistently can use concrete.
Right.
In terms of the capital funding, we anticipate that'll be used for those larger projects that we simply don't have the manpower over the facilities to address.
And I would also urge any council person who has an area of sidewalks that they're concerned about to make sure that we're aware of it.
Well, we keep lists, so, one of the issues is the constituents, one of the number one things that I get calls about, I don't know about anybody else, is sidewalk repair. So we do keep a list in the office, and there's been some dispute about the record keeping as far as which sidewalks need to be replaced, whether or not it should be done in an email. You can't file an SR request to replace a sidewalk, as far as I know, unless that policy's changed. So the challenge is to keep track of, first of all, what's the complaints, and then when are they going to get done. So I think besides doing it proportionally, which I think is right, we need a system here to track it. So if I have 10 constituents call me about 10 different sidewalks, how do I know when they're getting done, if they're getting done? How do we keep track of that? Have you given any thought to that?
I personally have not focused a great deal on that, but I know that now Joe, with his focus being solely on the sidewalks, I think it's a great opportunity to lay out that plan for the year and come up with a way to improve our communication with you.
Joe, maybe you could come up and speak to that a bit.
And we do,
Yeah.
yeah, we do have a system. So, I mean, just the older system right now is to currently call 6720 and then basically speak to whoever answers the phone, and we create a work order. It's a three-part form. The foreman goes out and evaluates the area, and then we decide what to do. So we do have an older system, but we are looking to improve the system. So that's where we're at, and I'll let.
And I just want to add, we all get calls, and some of them are more reasonable than others. So we have to make sure that we're letting our professionals make the determination as to which are the sidewalks that are in greatest need.
Oh, yeah, of course. But, I will say most of the sidewalks that have been reported to my office legitimately need to be fixed or replaced. So it's not my experience that people are making unreasonable requests. So I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't say unreasonable, but,
No.
in other words, we need to set priorities because, again, okay, anyhow, Joe.
But I'd like those priorities by district.
Paul basically summarized what we have right now, and in my feeling is yes, it needs to be updated, the system. That's the long and the short of it.
Yeah, it's not a
There
great
is
way to keep
no,
track.
it's old and outdated. It is being tracked though. Know that there are records and they are being kept. It does need to be updated though. Yes.
Okay, so we'll look forward to hearing your suggestions, and let's just stay on this.
And as far as because this sort of is part of the sidewalk, what's the tree replace? Are we dedicating any money to tree replacement? What's the plan? Because I feel like we've been taking down a lot of trees, but I don't know that we've been replanting them in the same number that we've been removing them. So are we going to look to as a comprehensive policy, or what's the plan?
I'm only prepared to talk about the capital plan today, but the capital plan obviously does not include a project that's solely responsive to putting trees back. I think that I don't know if Janine is prepared to speak about it, but we can, obviously reach back out to you and discuss the longer term plan on the tree replacement.
Well, don't we have money allocated for tree replacement? If it's not in the capital plan, it's in the regular budget, isn't it? It's part of the highway department budget?
It would be part of their normal operations, so I don't today have a number for you. I apologize, I wasn't prepared to answer a question on tree replacement from the operating budget, but if somebody else
Janine,
is.
would you like to speak to that?
Well, we are working on a comprehensive tree policy, but I think, I hope I'm accurate, that there's $115,000 budgeted for next year's tree replacements, tree plantings.
Right, but the money's one thing, but the policy is really important.
The policy is the bigger deal, so we're working on that. I'll bring you into the loop on it. We're going to create a whole entire policy so we don't have the issues where the trees are digging up our sidewalks anymore.
Trees are a big deal in Port Washington.
Yes.
I think everywhere.
Really?
Trees are good.
I'm just saying.
Okay. Right.
Any additional questions?
No, I just want to go back to Bunky Reed with regards to the spray pad. And so if anyone looked at the prior year's budgets, it was scheduled to be done earlier, but just like with anything, our priorities have to change. And so I just wanted to note that for the record, that we're not just moving it just to move it, but we're moving it because we have a more dire need for the pool improvements right now.
Yes.
And so we want to fix the things that we have in place before adding new things.
We remain committed to the splash pad.
Right.
That's why it's a plan.
Right.
It's a capital plan. It lays out what our plan is. And plans sometimes need to be changed, priorities change, but at least this is a very thorough document where we have a sense of where we'd like to be going.
Mm-hmm.
With respect to the ADA compliance and then the projects around the town dock, one of the things that has come to my attention over the last couple of months is that the ramps leading on and off the town dock, like when passengers board vessels, are not ADA compliant, and it's creating a big issue. And I had thought that Mal in public safety had put in a request to have those ADA compliant ramps designed and installed. And we talked about this at the Waterfront Advisory Committee, and my understanding is that it would make sense to do it even though we're reconstructing the town dock, because they wouldn't become obsolete. In other words, once we have them, whatever town dock reconstruction we're doing would take into consideration the fact that we have those ramps. So I don't have any idea how much it would cost. I think somebody said like $200,000 or something like that. But is there any consideration to that? I mean, it seems like it's sort of important.
Sure. Steve's just double checking the list we received. I'm unaware of that request. In the next 2 weeks, let's try to look into it and see if we can cost it out. And it's an important, very important. I know the supervisor is very focused on making sure everyone, regardless of ability, can access our parks and use our facilities. So I apologize that we weren't aware of that request, but let's look into it in the next 2 weeks.
Well, that was one of the things I had brought up originally in terms of the process of how you get your requests. So you said that the commissioners send the requests to you.
Yes.
So I think it would be helpful to know what was requested so that we're sort of not duplicating. So what is the process? In other words, how do you know what to put in the capital plan?
We, Steve leads the effort of reaching out to each commissioner. We ask for the list of what their needs there are. We also meet with each commissioner. We, much like the operating budget, must balance priority, different types of requests against our ability to fund. If we tried to fund every request that we received from every commissioner and department, your debt burden would go up. So what we're trying to do is meet our immediate needs, evaluate the needs that are further out, and then balance that in the plan.
Right.
But Mal is, unless I'm misspeaking, I believe he's not a commissioner.
No, he's not. But so what I'm trying to say is, how does those, because the other issue that came up was the status of the Bertram Harbor Patrol boat. So I have a letter, I'll give it to you, that somebody from the Waterfront Advisory Committee wrote advocating for us to do something with the Bertram, either sell it, because my understanding is that it does have value, or refurbish it. I think the preferred thing is to refurbish it. But more importantly, I think, than like the actual projects that we're doing is how we're prioritizing. So my point was, if the commissioners are sending you guys a wish list, doesn't it make sense to share the wish list with the town board so that we could, in conjunction with you, prioritize, understanding that we can't afford to do everything that everybody wants? But I guess my question is, the priorities seem to be being determined by someone other than the town board, and I think maybe it should be the other way around.
We discussed the priorities, the requests, with both the supervisor, senior staff, and the supervisor herself. So that.
Please, Sean, would you please speak to that? Because I know this has been an ongoing
Last August,
discussion.
I had approached the division heads, as well as Mal Nathan, who's Big Hospital 2. I asked them to put together their wish list. I also asked them to find the costs for those items on their wish list. And they had emailed me those items. So Harbor Patrol, Animal Shelter, Park Enforcement, all the 6 divisions. We looked at those issues, those wishes, and we brought them to the controller's attention, as long as we had the backup. So if Harbor Patrol didn't bring up those issues, I don't know Harbor Patrol as well as Harbor Patrol does. So they bring those issues to us and those wish lists, and we try to advocate to have the town move forward with those capital projects.
Well, was the ADA compliant ramps and the Bertram on the list?
This was back in August.
I have a PDF document that Sean is referring to, and there's 8 projects on here, and all of them are funded in the capital plan. I just want to also point out, similar to the road list, when we developed the road list, I get emails throughout the year from people saying, oh, let's do this road next year, or don't forget about this road. I get emails throughout the year about capital plan inclusions from SRs, from council people, from commissioners, and then once we're done with the operating budget, I meet with every single commissioner. I email them constantly. I'm basically harassing them the whole month of November to get all this information together, because we have to get this plan in order. And then we put the plan together as best we can, and again we go over it with the supervisor and her staff, and that's how the priorities are set. We basically lay everything on the table and try to best fund it.
So it seems to me that pretty much everything that was on the commissioners' lists are included in the capital projects. Maybe not to the extent that they would have liked, but certainly the things that they've identified.
Either in 19 or in future years.
Well,
in certain situations,
right, the capital plan.
As an example, the Parks Department requests, making this situation up, if they request $800,000 in vehicles one year and we can't fit that in the plan, we'll obviously make it a multi-year plan.
Well, I appreciate all of that, but the ADA compliant ramps at the town dock are a very significant issue. So if they didn't make it on anyone's list, it's good that we're talking about
Of course,
it now.
and I think that's the purpose of this work session, is just
And I'm not sure why they didn't make it on anyone's list, because the Bay Constable brings it up every single time we have a waterfront advisory committee meeting. So maybe you might want to talk about communication and how.
Yeah, so the Bay Constable would need to bring it to
great.
my attention as well, and
great.
and he has not. So we can't. So it's important that this is structured in a way that it makes sense, that it doesn't become unwieldy, and again, it's important that we're having a work session,
Yeah.
and now we have 2 weeks, to look at these things.
I just wanted to add something. Jill Weber, Parks Commissioner. The town dock reconstruction has been discussed for some time. That apparently there's grant funding coming, and we have sinkholes and various things. But and there is going to be a meeting next week on the 14th, an internal meeting to discuss how to move forward with town dock. And I understood, because town dock is under Parks operation, that one of the things we were going to be talking about was the ramp. This has been in dredging the ramp, the dock. It's part of a larger project. So I think that we plan to speak about it next week. And I wasn't thinking we were isolating the ramp, but maybe that's something that we could look at.
Well, I think the issue is that we had a great meeting at the last Waterfront Advisory Committee. We talked about town dock reconstruction. So my understanding is that the FEMA money really is just going to pay for the bulkhead and maybe resurfacing of the parking lot. But if we make any changes, that's something that the town will have to figure out how much they want to spend on that, and we're not sure yet what we want to do. But the FEMA money in town dock reconstruction, aquatic sand removal, my understanding is that none of those projects involve installing the ADA compliant ramp, right? Am I right about that?
I don't know if Tom could really speak to what FEMA has already said that they would fund, but whenever I've heard...
I didn't see it in any of the documents.
I'm just saying, whenever I've heard any discussion of how to move forward with the dock and the aquatic sand removal, it's been, and we need that ramp. It is part of a larger conversation, and maybe it can be done isolated in a more
Tom is going to
quick
address
fashion.
that. Thanks, Jill.
Tom Devaney, I'm the grants coordinator. There's actually two projects. There's the aquatic sand removal around
Right.
town dock and the actual town dock. And when FEMA approves a project, they give a scope of work of what they approve. They will also pay for modernizing it to all current codes and standards. So if there's an ADA code that was not existing when the town dock was originally built, now that we're going to rebuild it, we would have to build it to the current codes and standards. So it would pay for the ADA.
So they would pay for the ramp?
Yes.
Leading from the dock down to the kayak launch?
If that's the current, I'm going to say yes or no, but if that's the current code, then yes, they would have to pay for that.
If it's currently existing.
It's a current existing
You're
code,
asking
yes.
for a new ramp that is not part of...
But if FEMA's paying to replace the dock, so they want to build, they're going to rebuild to the current code and standard. So if the current ADA code includes this ramp, then that's what they would build it to.
So we need to look into that, because it would be important that if we went ahead and did it without FEMA okaying it or without
Right,
FEMA
no.
reimbursement, then it becomes our cost. If it's done within the scope of the FEMA project, then FEMA takes on the responsibility of the cost.
Right, and I agree with that. The only issue then is that project's probably not going to happen until 2021, because we're not as far along as I thought we were. So is it important for us to make it, I think it's a safety issue. So it keeps getting brought up to me. Whether it really is a safety issue or not, I can't tell. I'll leave that to you to determine whether or not it really is or it isn't, and how quickly it needs to be replaced. But it's been brought up numerous times, and I feel compelled to address it. So I'll let you guys talk about it, and then tell me what you think the plan is. I'm certainly willing to work within the parameters of what we're supposed to be doing as far as the FEMA goes. I mean, Victor, you've been at the
We
board.
will look
You've
at
been
it.
at that.
We will look at the ramp. and see
I mean,
see
it's-
what the situation is.
Right. I mean, I think it's one thing to say, yeah, we want to get FEMA to pay for it. I don't even know how much it really costs. But if it's a safety concern, I don't know that that's possible.
Well, also our biggest concern would be if we go ahead and install a ramp, and it's not a ramp that will work with the new system of the bulkheading system that we're going to do, then we're going to be abandoning whatever we did to work with the new system. So we want to make sure all the components. I mean, if Mal is talking about, the fact that this ramp would be independent of the improvements that we do at Town Dock, that's not necessarily the case.
I think that was the sort of the concept.
So I think
Right.
it's also important, Sean, that that Mal communicate with you
Absolutely.
concerns and that we hear from
Absolutely.
you about them.
Absolutely. Let me
Okay.
just clarify, the wish list did come from Mal last August.
Mhm.
So any items that he asked for were presented to the controls office, so we can look at discussing them for the capital plan. And I'll go back and I'll look if those items were on that wish list. I don't think they were. There weren't.
But what is on the list? Can you share?
I'd be happy to go
So-
through them.
Sure.
We can obviously go through those, but I think this highlights the importance of the capital team being able to meet with our council people in advance of today's work session. You obviously know your districts much better than I, and in this situation, we will take the next 2 weeks to look into it. It's a priority. It's obviously a safety issue. We want to make sure our residents have access to our amenities. But we'll look into it in the next 2 weeks. But this highlights the importance of our ability to meet with each council person in advance of the meeting.
And I think that in advance of those meetings, you should share the wish list from the commissioners so that we can see what's already been requested and figure out what we want to lobby for. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me to have council people lobby and have commissioners lobby and there's no sort of system in place.
So
That's my point.
I actually think it's important for council people to identify what they believe is important for their district, and if it's redundant, that's okay. Then it just makes it that much stronger. But let's move forward. Clearly, this is something that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I'd like to see the list.
Any additional questions? Concerns? Unless there's other questions that we want to discuss, our team, both Steve and I, DPW, any of the commissioners, in areas of your concern, we are available in the next 2 weeks. We want this plan to represent not only the priorities that we've identified, but as other important items come up to you directly, we want to be able to include those. We want to be able to have the plan represent the town's needs and what we're looking for going forward. So we appreciate your time.
Okay, so I thank you all for the incredible work that was done to put this together. I know that 5 years ago you didn't have a capital plan to look at that had pages with funding sources identified and all the different projects organized by the different categories. It's a tremendous amount of work. It couldn't happen without the commissioners meeting with our great team, without our council people meeting with the team as well to talk about their concerns and to be able to discuss what things are in your district. I think the sidewalk discussion was an important one, the handicap ramps, of course, as well. We have a lot of projects that are identified in this plan. It's going to be an exciting year. And I know the plan is for the next 5 years, but of course it's the first year in the plan that is the one that is going to be acted on in the coming year. So we thank you so much. Thanks everybody for being here, for participating. In the next 2 weeks, any issues that you want to discuss, please call Jessica, please call Aline, call Janine, anybody, Steve Pollock, people who are responsible for putting this together and working on it. We want to hear what your concerns are and see what we can do to address them. So, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for being here. I'm going to now nurse my cold, and we'll see you on the 18th. Thank you.